the paper is rated. Oh, is it? Hello, everyone. Let me get set up here. Let's pick a nice, what's going to go well with Eagle Fang Karate? Eagle Fang Karate. I think that'll be about as obnoxious as cats blowing up the Death Star. And I know I should have had this yesterday, but we weren't in class yesterday. So there we go. We got some chat. Yes. Well, I think it would have put you in like a standing waiting room anyway until I logged in. So we are good. Happy Vest Wednesday, everyone. I don't know if anybody else out there is wearing a vest. I've got my, I don't know, it just fits. So my wife, she's like, ooh, I just got your Father's Day present. Now Father's Day is quite a ways out. She's like, you have to open it right now. And I said, well, then I have nothing to open on Father's Day. But I'm so happy I did because it's the Eagle Fang Karate shirt. And it's, you know, very 80s. So I felt like my 80s blue vest would work with it. Kind of went well together. But again, if you do participate in any of the shirt days, shoot me a picture of, you know, whatever you're sporting for that day. Oh no, we do not do vests. No, you got it. Vests are cool. Vests are cool. Yeah, everyone should do a vest. It keeps your torso warm and your arms not. They really don't make sense to me. But Vest Wednesday, I kind of have to. Yeah, exactly. You're not invested. And, you know, like I said, Adam was just here and he would have been very sad with no vest friends, but he wasn't wearing a vest. You saw that. He only had one vest. He said it fell apart. So therefore he can't do it anymore. So I was thinking, or stitch it. We should all know how to sew. I know how to sew. You just sew it and fix it. Oh, nice. Shame someone into not wearing vests. That's terrible. That's terrible. Actually, I used to wear sweater vests a lot with t-shirts, right? So I'd wear a black t-shirt with a gray sweater vest. And I dug the look, but then somebody at work started making fun of me. Oh, are you wearing a sweater vest? Where are you going? Are you gonna be preppy? So I stopped wearing them. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna come up with a reason to wear them. And that's when Vest Wednesday was born. It gave me, you know, I said, hey, look, it's Vest Wednesday. I have to wear it, right? So it took away all their power. All right, so thank you everybody that's been sending me your images of your characters, you know, kind of get them checked out to see which one you should go with. Some people Monday asked about that, which was also good. It's definitely something you gotta, again, be proactive. We know Full Sail is not built for procrastination, right? It's just not the way the program runs. So procrastinating a couple days really hurts you. I know some people will wait until Friday to start their work for this week, and that is putting yourself in a real bad position. So thank you for everybody being proactive, shoot me emails, checking on stuff, asking questions. That is what I like. Also, for future reference, as we're now getting into actual 3D assets, we'll start talking about it today. If you say, hey, how does this look? Or, hey, I have a question, something's not working. There's a couple of things I want you to be thinking about doing. One, include as much information. Since it's probably going to happen through an email, you're going to wait a long time. And when I say a long time, I'm talking about multiple hours before I even get it, look at it. And if I don't have all the information I need, I'm going to follow up with an email saying, hey, can you send me more information? And now we're looking at 2 days past before we actually get an answer. So as far as talking about proactivity, it is best to send me either pictures, but what's even better is if you can make a short little video of what's actually happening. That way I can see your workflow, I can see your workspace. You could just do an unlisted YouTube upload and send me the link. It's super easy. And I think through the OneDrive, you can do that real easily as well. That just really helps. Or send me your file. You know, how do I make this look better? Here's pictures. Well, it'd be better if I can show you how I would do that. So I can take your file and do a sculpt over or something like that and send you a video of that. I am a fan of doing those when I get those types of requests. Yes. Yeah, you can ask at the end of question, at the end of the class. So definitely include pictures, file, movie if you can. If you're not sure how to make a movie, I always just use QuickTime and they do a new screen recording and then export it. It doesn't have to be huge, but I usually export it at an okay resolution so I can see what's going on, and then we go from there. But that usually helps out. Or hey, I need to set up a meeting or something like that. But yeah, so what's on the docket for today? Well, today we're going to look at ways of approaching your anatomy sculptures and how to get started with your character. I'm going to focus on getting started with the character first because I think everyone's really excited about getting into that. Hopefully you have your first read done. You've got your cactus builds wrapped up. Maybe you jumped into the other things, gave them a shot. Maybe you have some questions about, hey, I tried to start my block out, but it didn't quite work out. That kind of stuff, and we'll be able to get to that. So yeah, let's go ahead and share screens and get started with getting started with your block out. Okay, we're going to do this in 2 passes. So remember, today is going to be pass 1. Pass 1 is focus will be getting the model done to a gradable standard. Okay, completion. I see a lot of people messing around with things and then they end up not completing the model because they're so focused in a smaller area. This gets you into problems with contracts, gets you into problems with projects because you don't finish it. And a finished asset is always better than something that's not finished, right? It may not be what you wanted it to be. The excuse comes up, if I had more time, it'd look better. And I say, no kidding. You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's life, right? So I want to get you used to getting it done and then doing an iteration pass and then another iteration pass and then another iteration pass. So day 1, we're going to get it done on screen, talk about minimal viable product, I think is, Adam says it more, better than I do. We were just talking about it actually. And, this gets you on the grading scale. It's not going to get you high on the grading scale, but it's done. It's done. It's submittable. We're now going to get a score, okay, versus a 30 incomplete. That's not good, okay? So let's talk about that, and then we'll get into, if we have time. If we don't, we'll save the anatomy study until next week. Not next week. That would be terrible. Friday's lecture, okay? And where is my tablet, and why is it not activated? There we go. Probably help if I turned it on. It's been a rough day so far. I don't know. Things just dropping stuff a lot, forgetting things, losing things. It's been an interesting day, but we roll on. As Modest Mouse always says, we all float on. Okay. You're probably like, I don't even know who that is. That's okay. All right. So let me get my chat window back open. There we go. Okay. All right. So you can see my screen there. We've got our first reads and things like that. The next thing we need to look at is getting started with our asset. Our process is going to be image plane evaluation, corrections, and then loading them into ZBrush. And then we're going to block it out with Z spheres. We're going to make it an adaptive skin, and we're going to flesh out the first pass shape. Okay, that's going to be our process for the afternoon. Okay, so yeah, I always want to make sure that I am moving forward in a correct fashion. What can I do to an asset or to an image plane that's going to fix it, that's going to make it better? Okay, so we look at something like this, right? And this might be the raw image. Now, I know that a lot of these are poorly pictured because I took pictures of them on the wall with my cell phone. So I know they're not straight. And some of this is on purpose and some of it isn't. It's part of your evaluation. You might love an asset and just think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but maybe it's just not situated yet. Maybe there's too much that needs to be figured out, worked out before, you might spend a whole week trying to, fine tune the reference. Maybe it's just a couple little things. You always need to be evaluating. So with this asset, we need to look at it and say, what's wrong? What do I need? What do I not need? What do I have? What do I know? Okay, I know I need at least the front, side, and back. That would be great. I know that I would probably be beneficial to have these straight because they don't look straight to me. And if you're like, well, how do you know? Some people just can't see whether something's straight. Take away the guesswork. Use the bottom of your computer screen. Take it into Photoshop. Run a line on it. Tell yourself, you know, if we go with the nose, you can see that it doesn't line up down the midsection. Okay, does the model line up? Right, so I'm looking at the shoulders, and if I line up the shoulders, you can see that the one is taller than the other. And then we look at the back, and the back is a lot bigger. Now, some of this might be because it's rotated. Some of it might be because they were drawn wrong. This will also give me a look at what lines up and what doesn't line up. His belt from the side and the front, these almost never line up. You're going to struggle with a lot of asset things that they look great in the front, they look good in the side, but they don't line up from front and side. So what do you do in a case like that? Do you just shape it from the front, then move to the side, shape it from the side, then move back to the front, see that it doesn't line up and shape it again? No, I would shape it from the front. So yes, I would take this process. I would go from the front and shape. I'd go to the side, make sure that I'm following the overall shape from the side. You can see here, it's kind of going up and over the hips and into the back. So I'm going to want that feel, but I'm going to favor the front image. The front image is usually where people spend the most time. They put that one out there first, and then they do the other images off of that. What do you mean it doesn't? Does it not load to anything, or does it? What does it do?
It just says that the video is unavailable.
Okay, can you shoot me an email with that?
Yeah, no problem. I can do that.
Awesome, I appreciate it.
No problem.
And we're going to talk about Z-grids anyway today, so we'll be going through that. My my associate course director, when I did have an associate course director, she loved video, so she posted all kinds of links, and you'll see there's some that they just get more and more and more, and I've been trying to get rid of them because I do most of the demo of everything you need to kind of know anyway. So I appreciate that. Let me know, and I will get those fixed up. All right, so what do? We make identification. What's wrong? What's not working? What is working? What do I need to adjust? The other thing I'd be looking at, if you remember day one when I talked about this guy, I said he's not really in A pose. You can see here he's kind of, his arm is really close. Knowing what it's like to work in ZBrush, this is going to pose some problems, especially in week one. Later on, when we separate the hand from the wrist and all that stuff, this is not really going to be an issue. But initial establishment, trying to shape it out, your brush icon is a certain size, and anything it touches, it's going to move. So when you try and get in between things, you know, and try and move the hand or the thumb, you might very easily be moving the thigh as well. And that might be something we don't want to do. There's a lot of things we can look at, you know, like masking, right? What happens, anybody ever done a painting or painted anything, you mask off the area you don't want the paint to touch? It's the same idea. You mask off an area of your model, you will no longer be able to affect that model. But even masking becomes more difficult when surfaces are close together. So just knowing that and struggling with that, I'm sharing that with you as an experience thing. We want to keep an eye on that kind of stuff. And I might choose to move the arm a little bit. And we can look at how we go about doing all this as we go into the software. So you can see here, the model has been corrected. The asset has been corrected. All right, I've done it a couple times here. So this one here, you'll notice that the first pass of fixing it, you can see that the center line is still a little bit off, and he's not been, you know, made to be. So you look at this one here, he's really off. And watch this over here. Look at his arm. His arm goes out, his center line straightens up, and his side image gets a little larger. Okay, trying to line up these shoulders. Okay, the back, I mean, I mainly will use front and side. Back is important if you have one. But, you know, this has enough information I can use and shape and whatnot. If things aren't 100% aligned back here, then that's okay. For me, that's, you know, if you want everything to line up, then you need to make sure that happens before we get in there. Okay. So what are some techniques that we can use to fix this up? Well, let's go in there. let's just, I've got one already set up. So the first thing is cropping. You know, we crop out all the information we don't need, okay? Let me bring this over here. Get rid of my guides, right? So first thing I did was I crop, and that's just a simple, let's go ahead and crop. You say, hey, I want this, I don't need any of the other information, and I crop it out, right? Very, very important to be looking at and thinking about. As far as rotation, Command T brings up your free transform. So this is where I can rotate, you know, I can straighten things out, so on and so forth. Now I'm on the wrong layer, so probably help if I was on, this is the right layer. Okay, so I can rotate and I can nudge, and if you want to type in exact values, you have that information up here. You can put in 68.237 if that is what straightens it out. The other thing that I was doing was putting in guides. So as long as you have your rulers up, if you don't, go view and say you want to see your rulers. And then if you hold shift on the ruler, you can bring down a guideline and see if the model lines up. So these are really nice things to use to make sure that things are where they need to be. And you can see here, right there, showing that we are not lined up there in the shoulders. You see the trapezius back here, is it lined up with where we're at here? And even here, we're kind of getting there close, but not 100%. Okay, yes? So if you hold shift and click in your rulers, you can drag them down, and then when you let go, it'll place that guide. Now you can view them, get rid of them, keep them, right? You clear guides. They're gone, right? Okay. So the next thing we'll look at is how do we correct these? How do I move the arm if needed? And I want to stress to you that sometimes there's too much correction, and if I really push the model or the reference to being straight and move, I can ruin the look of the model, right? I remember back in the day when I showed a girlfriend of mine push pixel, and then every picture that hit my space was distorted because she was going around pushing pixel. And if you haven't used liquify push pixel in Photoshop, it's pretty cool. You want to kind of take out a dent of something, you know, you can kind of slide those pixels over and it's really powerful, but you can only use it so much before it looks irregular. So there are some things, as I start to move the arm, I might create a gap in between the arm and the armpit, you know, the torso. That could be something that I need to sketch back in. I'm also looking at things like, well, what is, based on his pose, why don't I move him into T-pose? Do you think T-pose would be a good idea? I mean, T-pose or A-pose are both acceptable. Maybe you saw somewhere that they modeled in T-pose and you want to model in T-pose. Can I take this model, can I take this reference image and make it T-pose? You think that's a good idea or a bad idea? 50-50 shot of getting it right. Take a stab at it. Bad. Okay, why bad? Why is that a bad idea? I agree with you. Why is it a bad idea? It messes with the armor. Yep, the armor is going to change, right? As soon as I go like this, boom. Yeah, it messes with other views because the other views are drawn to match the front. Asymmetrical. You got to stitch the design. Yep, now you've got the arms all the way up. Where's the lat, right? Where's the rest of the shoulder going? Because it's all going to be compressed. Also, if you feel, when you raise your arms up, what happens? The whole shoulder, right? You know, this is a thing that when you start to animate or rig, you have to think about, when I move the shoulder up, at a certain point, my rotation stops at the shoulder and it picks up at the clavicle and scapula, right? So then it raises, as my arm disappears. So then it raises, you can feel all this raising up. So once I go to here, my shoulders have literally raised up, my scapulas have slid out, the trapezius have compressed, and there's a lot of anatomical changes. Yeah, your pec is pulled, your lats are pulled, your rib cage could expand a little bit more, right? There's a lot of change there, and I'm not going to go through that, right? We shouldn't have to go through that, especially in an image. So yeah, I can't go from A pose to T pose without a lot of alteration, and that's something that we don't want to get in. So but I can move the arm 5-10 degrees, and that'll greatly help, you know, when I'm in the modeling process. So, you know, we have to evaluate. We've got to make choices. What can we do? What can we do? And you might be like, well, I don't know what I need to do. Well, hopefully I can help. Okay. The other thing, somebody mentioned asymmetrical. Okay. So asymmetry versus symmetry. That's going to be a tricky subject throughout the month. When do we approach? When do we not approach these types of things? Well, there are things that are naturally asymmetrical. I mean, his armor, his design is asymmetrical. His belt, right? The ropes hanging down, even the little loincloths, they are drawn asymmetrically. So what should we be concerned with and what shouldn't we be concerned with in this build, especially the proof of concept build? I don't care which way you're going, but I would recommend in the beginning following the main outfit. Okay, the main outfit and producing it symmetrically for the first 90 to 95% of the time. We want to take care of the easy stuff, right? It's much easier to sculpt one shoulder and know that I'm sculpting the other shoulder, a hip, the other hip, hand, the other hand. What happens though is people start and they're like, oh, well, I want to sculpt in, he said proof of concept, so I'm going to go ahead and start sculpting in this arm plate, and they break their symmetry. Right. So now they're like, oh man, what? Nothing lines up. So then they just go, well, I'm just going to keep going. And they sculpt one arm, then they sculpt the other arm, and they're literally doubling up on their work. Right. They are doing twice as much sculpture work than they needed to do. So in most productions, you're going to go through and you're going to do a symmetrical build and less structurally designated, right? Or the design is structural in nature. His outfit pieces, that is not structural. Structural means him, the character. Think about Hellboy with the big giant arms. So it was a good example, right? If you were doing, what was the other one? I think it was, no, it was the character that was Hotel Transylvania, where they try and hook up Drac with Frankenstein's cousin. Yeah. And she's like, let's dance. She's got the big giant arm, right? In that case, I still might sculpt it out, most of it symmetrically, and then when I get to that arm, I take off symmetry and start doing asymmetrical stuff, because they would need that for rigging and for setup and animation and all that stuff. So, you know, we got to look at the model. We got to think about how we're going to approach it, what's important, what's not important. This shoulder pad, because it's an add-on piece, I'm not going to consider it part of my build until very end, right? If I don't get to it, I can still do a very successful build without approaching this asymmetrical armor. These draped ropes, I'm not going to worry about those this week, right? I am going to worry about the thickness of the belt and maybe the knot. I will do the loincloth, because the loincloth, I'm going to show you how to do the loincloth, but the loincloth, this gets into a gray area. Do we have to do it? Do we not have to do it? They are more difficult. Depending on the build type you choose, they are more difficult. I'm going to show you how to approach it in a very sculptural nature. And then it's very attainable. But if you don't go this route, it's not going to be attainable, just because of the way the geometry is being established. And again, we'll talk about this stuff as we go through. He's got one pant leg and the other pant leg is off. Okay. In pass one, first pass, this model is going to be 100% symmetrical. Pass two, as I start pushing into that proof of concept, so Friday's lecture, then I might go, okay, cool. Let's take away the mass of the leg, reshape the leg, kind of drive that proof of concept a little bit more. You know, maybe get into some of these other things, but for the most part, symmetrical. So I'm going to follow one side. It's going to be this side over here. So their right side, our left side, as we're looking at the screen. Why is there a magic reason for that? Kind of. ZBrush, when you're mirroring and welding, when you're duplicating one side to the other side, it's backwards to what you would think Maya is. It takes from the negative and puts it in the positive, not the positive to the negative. I think Maya's default is positive X. ZBrush, for whatever reason, is negative X, and that pulls it to the positive X. So that, again, is one of those things that you just have to kind of know. And once you use the tool, you're like, oh, wait, it pulled the other side. And very quickly you realize, oops, it only takes the one side. Okay. You know, so I'm going to build symmetrically following this side over here. And so this side's going to be the side that I will focus on changing things and making sure that, you know, we got things situated the way we need them. The other question that comes up a lot, well, my character has a face covering. Okay. So you noticed in the selecting your characters that full facial features was something that was a requirement, right? The character needed full facial features. My character's got a mask, so that means I don't have to do a face, right? Wrong. Any characters with a mask needs a full face underneath that mask. Let's look at and talk about some ways of approach for week 1. Okay, it's got a helmet on, but I really want to do this character. What do I do about the head? Week 1, you can go either way with it. Okay, week 1, what I mean by going either way is I can shape it exactly the way it sits. It's week 1. Knowing that in week 2, I'm going to need to separate the helmet, the pads, put in a full head with full skull structure. Okay, or this week, if I chose to, I can maybe sculpt to the cowling of the helmet and then worry about the head shape. If it were me, first time through, I would focus on what I see and I would build this. And then when we get a little bit more technical next week, then I would go, okay, now I know a little bit more about that. I'm not clunking around with the camera or anything like that. I'm a little bit more proficient with movement. Now I'm going to go ahead and figure out how we're going to separate that and then put another structure in for the head. But everyone's going to need a full face, whether it's covered with goggles or not. So when we go back to this guy, do I need to proof of concept shape out his helmet? No, I don't. If you look online, the example file there doesn't have the hat. That character is wearing a hat, but I didn't sculpt the hat. That's because the hat, again, is, I would treat hats and helmets like, unless it's a full helmet covering the head, I mean, it's just easier to sculpt that out of the gate. But if it's just like a hat or a small like skull cap helmet, I would treat that like a backpack. It's an add-on, it's a secondary. Let me get the skull shape right first and then move forward. Yes?
So okay, so for my character, it has kind of like a face mask / headdress.
Okay.
I can walk up and show you what it looks like, but would you recommend that I tackle it the same way that you just described, or?
I don't know if I would recommend, which way do you see it? But like, does it look like you're going to have a lot more sculpture work doing the headdress and the face mask, or would it be easier to focus on a head structure and shape?
Head structure.
Okay, so that right there is how I would look at it. Now, I can argue either way. That's one thing that I hate, and one thing I hated about school was I questioned, and I was like, I don't know. And I can usually find a plus and a minus no matter which way we go. The plus to worrying about it during sculpture phases, the shape will be there. So when we go to actually build it, we now have source material. So next week, we're going to talk about straightforward building and then source building. Source building is we have something and we're building something on top of it. But the shape's there. We're not worried about the shape. We're just worried about now building a new piece that represents that shape. So in that case, it is a little bit easier to account for all that stuff in next week. It could be easier. It could also be easy, you know, it could also be easier to just build the pieces next week and so on and so forth. That's why some people are like, well, I like a body blank. Yeah, and in some cases, a body blank is the way to go. We are not doing that because we need to do more shaping and sculpture. So I'm going to be doing this one without the helmet. And I actually did that one. I did this one last month. I might actually do the cop. Let's see. I think I got a couple other ones in here. Not her. She's cool, but showing her. I'll let you guys decide which one you want to see. And I'm talking about ones that are in standard pose, going into something that isn't a hero, not a hero pose, but an action pose that is more of a challenge character. I don't want to get into that because that's a whole nother, got to repose them and all that stuff. Yes. If it were me, every time I walked into a class, I would always think cheap and effective, right? cheap and effective. So this character is great and I love the design of it, but this one's a little bit more situated. So, you know, and this one here is really cool. And if we have some experience and realistically, if you look at it, she's almost straight. And there's some things I can do in Photoshop where I can take the head, cut it right along the jawline, rotate it straight. The arm, I would usually model them this way and then bend them into position. So it just takes a little bit more thought as you go through. If I'm modeling the arm with Z-spheres, remember that's an armature. So once I get the distance situated, the proportion situated, I can very easily rotate the arm out. And you'll see that as we go. I can rotate the arm out and capture more of that A pose. Or maybe I try and follow this side where she is almost in A pose and her leg is in an extreme A pose. But I'm looking at it with experience and going, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. I usually don't recommend it.
Okay.
Just because it opens up a whole nother can of worms that it's just more, it's challenging, just like a challenge character, right? Not totally undoable, especially with only one character that we're doing instead of multiples. You will have the time to establish your shapes and then get into moving and bending and rotating and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll look at a couple of these here and you guys tell me which one you want me to do. Characters like this, I did want to point this out, characters without visible appendages, you do not have to do the things you can't see, right? Again, this is not a body blank. We are focused on look, we are focused on the outer shell, and that's what we are pushing towards, okay? So like this here, we would shape out the dress, no legs underneath it, and go from there. If we need legs later on, we can always add them. All right, so again, some stuff in Photoshop here. How do we fix this? I'm always non-destructive. So if I'm gonna go ahead and move the arm, I'm not gonna use my pen because it tends to double click and mess up my selections in Photoshop. Okay, so I'll usually make a selection like that. We're gonna kind of puppet it. All right, so I'm a non-destructive. You'll hear that term a couple times, but I'm gonna right click and do a layer via copy. And that gives me a duplicate of the arm. This way, I'm not really messing with anything underneath. And sometimes for a cut like this, I like to do that. Then I'm gonna hit T for free transform, Command T. And then I'm gonna move the pivot up to the shoulder. So this is something they changed, right? They changed this and I didn't know that they changed it, so it drove me crazy about a month ago. But when you enter this tool, but if you have an older version, which I don't think anybody does, the pivot point's gonna be here and you just grab it and move it. But now you have to hit the Option key and it'll allow you to move and position your shoulder point. And then you can grab one of the corners and you can rotate. I am gonna go up a little bit, nudge it with my arrows and then in a little bit. And then I'm gonna hit Enter and I set that new one. Yes, we are modeling today. Do you think we're not modeling today? Think I'm fibbing? No, we're definitely gonna get to it. Gotta make corrections though. Gotta make sure we're on the right foot. It's like going out to run a marathon, but not tying your shoes. Not gonna work. So I now take that. I'm gonna go with that layer. We got the white color there. Make my brush a little bit larger. Come on, brackets. Okay, and I might need to right? There might be some touch-up work or something like that that we need to do. Okay. Let's go back to our original. I talked about making this a little bit larger. Okay, so with that selection, okay. Make sure you're linked. This way you're not going to distort. If you don't have those linked, people end up going, yeah, cool. Let me stretch this. All right, cool. There we go. I made it the right size. And they've actually distorted their image, so we don't want to do that. Okay, so we set that. You know, you could see here, we could do quite a bit of manipulation to the image, and all this stuff is going to help me out. I see a lot of people starting off and they haven't made any corrections to their images. Their character's kind of to the side. Symmetry doesn't work. You know, there was proportion issues that they could have corrected quickly this way, so on and so forth. As far as doing your center line, this is when you get into something like edit, transform. We have the warp. This works good for nudging things over. Again, can only be done so much before we begin to destroy the image, degrade the image, make it look distorted itself. So there are some things here that can be done fairly effectively, efficiently, and you will end up on a much better foot getting your model going. So now once you get that, save it as a JPEG, and you will have your setup asset. So getting ready, we've got this one here. You can see we can fix it, but I'll work with something different because I blocked him out last month. And if you guys want to see him blocked out, I can totally do this guy here. Or if there was between this one, or this one. What do you think? Which one you want to see me do? This one? This one? This one? We got one for the samurai and one for, I can't remember, she's kind of like a, I can't remember how they have her, like what her name is. Asset 1Z sphere. No, that's not it. Okay, so we got a doesn't matter. I vote this one. Okay, so we got two for this one. And if you don't vote, you can't complain. All right, so we're going to go with this one here. For the most part, she works out pretty good as far as her images. They're pretty set up. Definitely, this is a straightforward build. There's nothing really asymmetrical that I really need to worry about. The arms are a little bit off, but for the most part, this model lines up really nicely. The boots start to pose some issues. I really like the shape from the side, but from the front, none of this lines up with what we're seeing from the side. So the boots do pose a little bit of an issue. So it really, really depends on, you know, which one you're going to favor. Either one, if you favor the front versus the side, you still end up with some nice looking boots. But we're not really worried too much about the boots yet. Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Hey, good afternoon. I have a question. Like when you do your blockouts, like details with the earrings, do you do the blockout with the earrings? Like something
No,
like that?
no, usually little dangling things I don't worry about.
Okay.
Yeah. So proof of concept is going to be, it's almost like when you sculpt with one chunk of clay. There's only so much stuff you're going to be able to get. So usually like anything that's hanging, like with her loincloth, I'll be able to achieve in a sculptural sense in this first build. But, you know, it's almost like looking at this guy and the little ropes that are hanging down, I wouldn't try and approach those in week 1. I've seen people do them and they look okay, but you know, time is time, and getting into small little things, you know, kind of, I stay away from those. But yeah, that's a good question, you know. And people are all, you know, all your models are different, all your characters are different. So when you're like, hey, how do I approach that? You know, a lot of times you got to ask. I mean, of course, when in doubt, push it maybe a little bit more than what you would think. That covers your safety, you know, gives you a little safety net. But yeah, I'll answer you. Or, you know, Veronica in lab. I'm not sure how, did anybody go to lab? You went to did you go to the Zoom session?
Not the Zoom session, but
A lab. So not the one with Veronica. She's going to be so hurt. She's going to be sad. That's right. You did? Was it good? Only large scale or small scale 2? Yeah, she's awesome. I mean, and for anybody that maybe didn't ask a question, they probably, from your questions, you know, got some good information. You were the only one there? That breaks my heart. If you can see me now, my face is in a crying, I mean, my eyes maybe show it, but. Yeah, she gets lonely. She's like, just nobody showed up, you know, or one person showed up, and that makes her sad.
In my defense, there was like all you can eat sushi for like $25 at this place.
That's not a good excuse. That is not a good excuse. I mean, yes, that's very tempting, but you got to say no for 20 months. That's all. 20 months. Let's see. Do the large or the small 2? I still don't know if I'm understanding the question. The large image or the small image? We're going to load this one, and I think that one's going to work out good. Okay, so ZBrush has switched to where it's going to open up whatever your last model was. If that happens, it's no big deal. I did kind of like a clear canvas when I start. Yes, they are Zoom. I can show you where that link is again. I don't think she changed. She usually lets me know when she changes that. But so if you remember, we're going to go right to the class page. The large one and the small one. No, you're just doing the large one. The small one is, I think, in Art 1 and Art 2, they have you do like an age change or slight style change. I do the one with the image, whatever the main images are, I do that one. Okay, so if you go to the instructor contact information and class schedule, go to this calendar here. So we have, this is where you're going to find the link, the CMF PRM labs. This is where you'll have the information for that. Remember, I was talking about they were different because we share PRM, CMF, and port 4 are all in the same lab. So we had to give it a different Zoom link. Does that help? All right, no problem. Okay, so if you ever open up your model and it's not what you need, or you were dragging and dropping stuff, or just by accident you snapshotted your model and placed it on the canvas, basically all you need to do is switch from edit. So when you're in edit mode, right, you're able to sculpt. When you're not in edit mode, you are basically, you just have a canvas. This is where the whole 2.5D came from, right? So you can lay down bricks and rocks and make it look like you had a brick road, and then you can take that snapshot and make it a normal map, bump map, or whatever. So a lot of times this will happen and someone's like, I see 3 versions of my model, but I'm only moving 1. What do I do? just get out of edit mode. So you can see, just click that button, get out of edit mode. Command N will clear your canvas. So Command N wipes everything out, and you're free to drop your asset back on and then go right back into edit mode and continue working. But I'm going to switch and clear my canvas because this is not what I want. Okay, what I want is a Z-sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my simple tool over my toolbox. Why they call them tools, I don't know. A tool to me is not a piece of geometry, but like I said, they like to be different. So I'm going to go simple tool, and I'm going to pick Z-sphere, and I'm going to drag and drop it onto my canvas. If you hold shift, it will snap and you let go. Command N, N is in Nancy. Now, everything you place should be at the origin, unless you've moved it and you've made it a tool and you're redropping it on the canvas. But all default stuff should go right to the origin. This is very important to understand because we're going to keep it there. We want to work symmetrically, and because we can't snap to grids 10 units out or whatever, we need to keep things as centered as possible. This is how people break their symmetry and run into problems, okay? So we've got that centered. We go right to edit, okay? We are now in edit mode, and you can see that our icon has changed. And we've also gotten our floor plane. If you don't see your floor plane, you'll see the button right here. And what's the hotkey for turning on and off your floor planes? Can anybody tell me? Shift P, there it is, right? So if you hover over anything, it will tell you what the hotkey is if it has a hotkey. So I use that a lot because when we want to see our images, we need to make sure that those are on. But we don't want them on all the time. We want to turn them off, turn them on. You know, when they get in the way, they will get in the way. You're going to want to turn them off to evaluate your shape. Yeah, go ahead with your question. Yes. Does the floor plane adjust to the object? Yes, it does. That was something that people were like, oh, what's 0Y? You know, but as you move your object up, it will snap back to the object. So, and you'll notice when you turn on your X plane, it'll be on the side of the object, and the Z plane will be on the back of the object, and that will adjust. Now, your images should not adjust. When we add those in, that will not, it should not be moving around or noticeably moving around. But, you know, again, we'll talk about that. Okay, so now we're ready. I will hit the X key. X is your symmetry. Okay, since we're going to be drawing symmetrically, we're going to be doing both arms at the same time, both legs at the same time. We want symmetry on. This also maintains a straight center line when we're going up through the midsection and whatnot. There are other types of symmetry. If you go to transform at the main menu, you will see activate symmetry. You also see X, Y, and Z. Yeah, there are times when you'll need Y or Z, but for the most part, we're going to start with X. X is the one we're going to use for most of it. There is also a radial symmetry. This is really nice if you're sculpting a, you know, something that you've got 8 designs and they're all the same. You know, you're making like a starfish or something like that. Radial symmetry becomes important. You probably put that on the Y, look at your model from the top and start building those pieces. And you can add a whole bunch of segments if you need to, okay? But right now, regular symmetry is what we're going to use. Okay, but we need it. It would be nice if we had a reference in there, right? So in the intro to ZBrush video, you might have heard them talking about saving tools. Okay, this is a ZTL file. ZTL files are great. ZBrush tools are great, but they do not save your reference image with them. They save just the model. So for quick model backup, it's great, but every time I open up ZBrush, I don't want to have to reload my reference images, right? Am I right? I mean, that sounds like an annoying thing. So I'm going to save a .zpr or a ZBrush project. That's going to give me anything I set up will stay in that project. Okay. These are found under File, Save As. Now you'll notice, you see that green button. What does that say? If you can see it. So Save As, and there's not green, a yellow button. You see that yellow button? It says Save As. There's one button that's active and it says Undo History. That is a very dangerous button. Honestly, history here is much different than Maya. Maya's history is compartmentalized. It is node based. So you have an extrude with all the options. You plug that into your mesh and you get your extrude. When you want to change it, you can go back into that piece of history and you can actually change some of the values. ZBrush is not that way. The only time I've ever saved or needed to save undo history is to do a time lapse. I want to scrub back through history or scrub forward through history. Usually my history is fine to have during my session, right? If I want to scrub back and see where I started to where I've gone, that's great, but I don't need to save it. I think this is a big thing that causes people go, I can't submit my files are too large. Well, did you include undo history? Oh yeah, I did, sorry. And they end up like wondering, why is my file 1.5 gigs or 3 gigs? It's that undo history. So you're probably good to check that off, turn that off, and then you can go save as, and you'll save as ZPR. What should we never save as, or I've never seen a reason to save this, but under document, there is a save, and this is a saved document. This is nothing but your canvas. What it'll do is it'll flatten your model to the backdrop, to your background, to your canvas, and you'll lose it. Your model is gone at that point. It is there, but you can't do anything to it. It is part of the background. That is a ZB, as in Bravo, R. We don't want that one, okay? We want to stay right here under File, Save As, make sure undo history is not included, and then you'll be good all day long, okay? Especially for this class. Later on, you might be spitting out ZTLs and stuff, and that's fine, you know, but I think for this class, the ZPR is the way to go. All right, now we're going to go ahead and bring in our reference image. We're going to go File, or sorry, not File, Draw. And I'm going to be going to this menu a lot, so I'm going to dock it. And the way we dock it is we grab that little power button, we drag it over to where we want it, we let go, and it is there. We can turn it off, and we can go bring it back and put it back over there. You know, we can move these things around quite a bit. I just don't like the way that their interface is set up. If I go down, I click a button, the menu disappears. I have to go back to it, go down, click a button, it disappears. This way it's set, and you'll find that there are menus that you go to a lot, you'll want them to be docked like this. This is only going to stay docked for the first part until we get our images in there. Okay, so we're going to go here where it says open, save, floor, front, back, up, down, left, right. Okay, so if we go to front, back, you'll notice everything's grayed out. It's grayed out because our floor planes are not turned on yet. We want to turn them on. You can see there's the button that stays active in our workspace. There's also the button in the menu. Or you can hit what? Shift P. Okay. Now, another thing that ZBrush is notorious for is these wee little buttons. Okay, so I just hit Shift M to bring up the magnifier. And you'll see that there is an X, Y, and a Z. Now, the only reason I've ever used the magnifier is to show students where buttons are. Not really sure why it's there. But I'm going to turn on X, Y, and Z. I'm going to turn all those on, and now you can see I get my multiple planes. Okay, we want all of those up, and you can see they are aligning themselves to the whatever corresponding side of the model is. Okay, now as far as rotating, when I'm in Maya, I establish a model using my ortho cameras, front, top, and side. It's the same thing here. So there's a couple things we want to do. We want to make sure perspective is turned off. Don't have perspective on, turn that off. We can turn that on later on, but this will give us a true ortho view. And as I rotate, I want to make sure that I'm seeing the front. So when I start rotating to the front, I'm going to start my tumble, just clicking in space, and then I'm going to hold Shift. and it's going to snap me to an ortho. You can also click your buttons here. I usually do mine more on the fly. But this is really nice. I'm glad they did put that up there because it gives you an orientation. It lets you know. When ZBrush first came out, man, I was notorious for building things upside down, backwards, and all kinds of things. At least they were straight, though. That was important. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and bring in an image. Look, floor. Now we have options. Map 1 is going to be your front. Map 2 is going to be your back. What you're going to do is select map 1. It's going to bring up this menu, and you're going to go to import. Now you just locate your file. Let me see which one it was. It was her, right? Yep. We'll go ahead and grab that one. Asset 1 Z-sphere. Oh, there it is. So let me ask you a question. What do you think we should move? The Z-sphere or the image? The image, exactly. As soon as we move that Z-sphere, it's no longer centered. That is a big problem. So we're going to always move the image to the Z-sphere. We do this with some sliders. We have horizontal offset that'll slide it over. And as far as centering, you can either type in numbers. There's a couple ways of working with this. You can type in numbers, or I'll bring up Shift M again. So we can type in, but if you tap on that, you should notice, so you see that little tiny slider, it almost looks like a display error. That gives you a more refined type of movement, smaller numbers, right? It's not jumping so much, and that will help me line this up. But again, if you want to type in numbers, you can finagle those. Just one thing I've noticed about ZBrush is that it loves really small values. It's not like Maya where you build and you're 15 grid units tall. In here, it's like 0.5, and then 0.6, it really makes a difference. You're like, oh my goodness, I didn't think it would make that much difference. But yeah, they like the smaller numbers. Okay. And you can look, looks like we're pretty straight. We're a little over to the one side. We'll see how it goes, and we'll make corrections as needed. Okay, but I think we're sitting okay there. Now we're just going to go ahead and repeat the process. We're going to go to the side here. So this is going to be our left and right. And map 1 or 2, honestly, I haven't really noticed a difference with going either one. I guess if you had a different right view, this should be your right, this should be your left. So you know what? I'll do it right this time. I'll put it there. I'll put it there. Let's go and import that. It's going to be the same one. Okay, fine. Yeah. You know what? You don't want to give me that? You want to hide it on me? It's cool. It's cool. Fine. I'll trick the system here. I'll just bring in that one. I got time to mess with it. I know that works, but it comes in backwards. What should we do? Man, if they only had a flip. Oh my goodness, they do. There we go. Now your side image usually isn't too bad. You just make sure your center of mass is there. So you either slide it back and forth. And because we would have spent time lining all these images up, you'll notice that they line up instantly here. I don't have to touch scale or anything like that. Okay. So this is pretty cool. We're nice and set up. You can see that they're in the backdrop. Seeing them though is a little bit funky. The default setup here is fill mode 3. I'm a fan of fill mode 1, and then I click front. This gives me more of that screen look, and this allows me to see the silhouette line up to my model a little bit better. So this is the way I like to run it. I think it gives me the best look on all of them. Okay, there are a couple others. There's one here, project on mesh. This is really nice. When you start getting into your proof of concept build, this might be something you can use. And it's not going to do it now because we don't have any geometry there, but it will project your image onto your geometry so you can see where things really are situated or line up. You're trying to figure out that one when you were working. Yeah, that's a really, you talking about the front and fill mode and all that? Yeah. I can't remember if I go over that in the video or not. But it leaves me something to talk about today. All right, and you can bring in a back, right? If we want to bring in the back image, we can load that in. Still a little curious as to why my other image isn't loading up, but that's okay. I'm going to go to the back. And what is interesting about the back image is we go front to back, map 2. Oh, going to keep my pen a little closer. We bring that in, and then we're going to go ahead and slide it just over. Now, make sure that you have the right one selected. Otherwise, you'll end up moving the other one off plane. Looks like that needs to come over a little bit. Okay. Now, what's neat is as soon as I rotate around, it switches to my front. I rotate around, switches to my back. That's pretty helpful. And at any time you feel like, oh my goodness, I can't see my model, you just turn the floor planes off, you bring them back on. But follow your reference. I see way too many people modeling, the reference is over here, and they're like, oh, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm like, well, that's why it doesn't look right. It doesn't match the reference. And that's our goal, is to match our reference. Okay, so I think that all looks good. Now, I don't want to do that again, right? Anytime I don't want to do something again, I'm going to go ahead and save. And why that's called that, I don't know. We'll just go to the desktop. We'll just do this block 1. Okay. ZPR, that's what we want. There we go. So now we have that. And well, you can use rotate, the button here. But if you have your mouse, are you talking about like an actual button you hit and you maybe like shift, click the button, it'll snap, it'll move it? Snapping, not really. You can go into, if everything is symmetrical, later on, we'll be looking at this, but geometry, you have position. That's position though. That's not really not going to give you what you're looking for because there's also a size there. I can't remember if there's a rotate that shows up when it's not geometry yet, so it's not going to give us that. But under deformation, there is a rotate. This is off of the world origin. But again, it does give you numbers, but once you let go of the slider, let's say I rotate this to 48 degrees, 48.273, I let go, it zeroes it out, and it thinks that what its new position is 0 rotation. So that kind of isn't what I would work. Yeah, if you stumble across one, let me know. I know that through the, and again, this isn't geometry, so it's not going to work well, but through the gizmo, if you hold shift, it will snap like 5 degrees. Yeah, well, as I rotate, yeah, you hold shift and it'll snap to your orthos. But that's the camera, not the asset, so. All right, so let's go ahead and start throwing in the Z-spheres. Now, I'm going to let you know that I'll be very honest with you and say, if this is all you do, you're getting a 0. If you do this, you're going to get a 30. If you go to this and beyond, you'll be a 70 and higher, right? Because a lot of people, they'll do this first step, which this first step should literally take a matter of minutes. And then hitting a button to make a geometry is a matter of seconds. That is not enough to earn credit for the week, okay? And remember, I'm doing a hybrid build. I'm doing Z-spheres. When I'm making an adaptive skin, I will keep the Dynamesh option on, and then we'll get into shaping. And we'll do pass 1 shaping. It's going to be more like a body blank, but then we'll pick it up again on Friday, and we'll do that proof of concept sculpture, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and draw these in. So I'm going to now start using Q, W, E, and R, very similar to Maya. or you can just hit the draw button, the move button, the scale, and the rotate, right? Either one you want to get into. Draw will allow you to draw. I'd say working with Z-spheres is probably the biggest thing to get in the habit of. You probably noticed that with the cactus. If you're like, am I in draw? Am I in move? You know, I put a Z-sphere in there. I shouldn't have done that. So that's gonna be a problem. Now, based on the video, for anybody that did it, if I hit the A key, which we know from the video that the A key activates my adaptive skin preview. Let's say I hit the A key and it crashes instantly. ZBrush shuts down. What's the problem? Or what could be the problem that's mentioned in that video? I'll start drawing as you think about it. Boom, boom. Nobody knows? If I hit the A key now to show my adaptive skin preview and ZBrush crashes on me, what is most likely the problem? What is an extra Z-sphere? Yes, you have an extra Z-sphere. You have double tapped by accident. There you go, the extra Z-sphere. Yes, very good. I didn't know if you posted that before I said that or not, but that is exactly right. So what happens is we do a double tap. We accidentally skim. We think we put one down, but we're like, oh no, I didn't. Let me put another one. So we have a very tiny Z-sphere there, and then we have another one on top of it. So what ZBrush tries to do is calculate that geometry, and it says, no, I don't want to do that for you. And it crashes and it shuts down. Too many people fight that to the end. They're like, I've been spending 3 days working on this, and it keeps crashing, and I don't understand why. And I said, why didn't you just redraw it? You could have been 30 minutes more work, and you'd have been right back moving forward. You know, oh, I know, I want to find out what's wrong. I need to figure out what's going on, so I learned better that way. And so we don't have time for that. Usually it's that is the problem. And it's quicker. Z-spheres are designed to be very fast, easy to do. They should not take a lot of time. So don't invest emotion into it and go, well, I built it, I need to keep it. Start over, just from scratch. Yep, there you go. I hate those screensavers. I've turned them off a bajillion times. I've saved my configuration and they keep popping up. All right. Right. So we would just redraw them. The other thing that could cause a discrepancy or a crash, Z-spheres, if you've ever built a rig, a lot of us haven't, but if you ever built a rig, we're focused on bend points. And that's initially what I'll target with Z-spheres. I'll target bend points. The next thing I'll target are significant volume changes, right? If it's not a significant volume change, I know I'm going to have to shape anyway, so I'm just going to leave it more simplistic. But what will happen is some artists will draw 30 Z-spheres from the shoulder down to the elbow, trying to make the Z-spheres give them the shape. And ZBrush doesn't, it's just like, no, there could be one issue, one's twisted, it doesn't like it. So simplify. So we're going to go in here and we're going to do the arms. We're going to do probably make sure, it'd be good if I had the right button. We'll draw the shoulders. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw one more, click to my move, bring that down. Right now, you did notice here, what did I say about your draw size in the cactus build video? What did I say about the draw size and moving and manipulating your Z-spheres? My draw size is now 64. Is that good or bad? It's not really too bad when I'm working on this one, but if I'm here next to multiple Z-spheres, this becomes a problem. Why? You just saw it a second ago. Why is that other one moving? Why is the shoulder moving? Shoulder shouldn't be moving. I'm not clicking on the shoulder. Why is the shoulder moving? Guess what? It's selected in a way. I selected both of them because my icon touches both of them. I will move both of them. So if you really want pinpoint accuracy, make that a 1. And now, no matter what, I'm going to move only the one z-sphere. Okay, so I'm going to go in and draw, and I'm just going to drop in one there. Scale it down a little bit. And this is another thing that a lot of people panic about. Based on the way the camera, when it identifies if you're on the object or you're off the object, it doesn't know that you're right in the center. So what it'll do is it'll draw slightly to the front or slightly to the back. And people go, oh, my z-spheres aren't drawing right. This is, again, one of those things that you have to just get used to and go, okay, it is what it is. I have to move it because it's just the way the program works. I went to draw mode and just clicked in between. So if I wanted to put one there, I can just put one in there. Option will invert 95% of your brushes. So if I want to remove it while in draw mode, I hold option and I can delete. Okay. So I'm going to go to the top, and this gets into rigging and everything. It's just a good practice. Bend your arms, please. Let's just put a little bit of bend. Even if they're wearing a shirt and you can't really see the bend, bend them. Bend them. Just a degree or two, something. Right. So we're going to bring that back, and then we're going to, you know, boom. We're going to bend those arms a little bit. Got to bend those arms. Your vest is getting in the way. What kind of vest do you have? Does it have like tassels and stuff hanging on your keyboard? If so, I'm jealous because I do want a tassel vest. My wife thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, no, you're crazy. I want what I want. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move these over, reposition them. And then I'll show you if I want to add an extra one in here for the volume of the forearms, I can. But don't get crazy with this. All right. Again, we're gonna be left with a tube character. This is going to give us tubes. It's not going to match in the side, and it's not going to match 100% in the front, or vice versa. It's just the way these are. This is just giving us a posed armature that we would then sculpt into shape. So trying to push these too far just doesn't balloon people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a balloon people. And people will just leave that and go, hey, I turned in my work. And I'm like, unfortunately, that's an incomplete. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm going to leave the hands. I'm going to go ahead and do the neck and the head. Now the neck and the head, this area is a little bit funky. You could really get into z-spheres and have them generate some better topology for you. But we're going to keep it a little bit more on the simple side. I don't like also having my z-spheres really close to each other. If they're too close, you'll sometimes get this transparency where one will vanish. That's kind of a warning, like, hey, you might be pushing that a little bit too much. Now, I haven't hit the A button yet. Probably a good idea to hit that. I'm going to go ahead and Shift P to hide my reference. I'm going to hit the A button and take a look. And just kind of want to see what's going on. Z-spheres are notorious for giving, you know, star junctions in areas we don't want them. And sometimes these star junctions can be eliminated by just nudging your z-spheres forward or backward. If they're too close in the front, it'll give you a real nasty star junction. If they're too far in the back, it'll give you a real nasty star junction. This is really only a concern when you're dealing with z-sphere geometry and not going to Dynamesh. Since we're going to Dynamesh, it won't be too much of a concern. So remember, Dynamesh is that grid of topology that doesn't care about shape other than giving you geometry that'll allow you to at least capture those volumes and forms. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to bring back my wireframe there. I'm going to hit A again. The other thing you'll notice is I'm not sculpting on any of this. And I haven't taken symmetry off at all. Right? Symmetry is still in play. So, you know, I'm not doing anything kind of funky. Just going to bring those down. And then we're going to go to draw. I'm going to drop in one. Let's go and situate to the side. Okay, we're gonna go back to draw. So the Q key, I'm gonna put one in for that and one for the leg a little bit. Switch to my rotate with the E key. That is backwards from Maya, rotate and scale. And we'll make that hip a little bit larger. Now you can see here also the legs do not line up with what you're seeing in the front or side. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem, a little bit of something we need to worry about. I'm basically, one time I was at work and I work at this lab at night and this bolt of lightning hit me. And ever since then, I've been a little faster. I call it the speed force and, you know, it suits me well. Now, what I'm doing is I start moving and I just, as soon as I start rotating, I hold shift. And that'll snap me into those views. And I was totally joking about the speed force. Wink, wink. Serious. All right, I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger. I'm gonna hit draw and I'm gonna put in something for the toe. There's a lot of volume down here, so I'm gonna make those a little bit bigger. I missed the Flash show. I wasn't a Green Arrow fan, but I did like the Flash. All right, let me look at those shoulders. I feel like those shoulders need to come down a little bit, because we're gonna have a lot of volume there at the shoulder. All right, let's go and do hands. Now, as far as hands go, people say, how much of a hand do I have to do? Paddle hands. These are paddle hands, mitten hands, right? So it's a thumb and a flat paddle for your hands. What if my character's hands are drawn like this? You still need paddle hands, okay? You're not gonna sculpt them like this, and you sure as heck wouldn't rig them like that in fists unless that's all you were doing. Remember, back in PlayStation, right? They would literally, if a character was holding a gun, they'd build this wedge thing and block, and then they just stick the gun inside of it, and that's how they would hold it. Or they would do a trigger finger, it would be one finger sticking out, a block, right? So we don't really do that stuff. Did they do any new seasons? Because I think the last thing I saw was something about the daughter and she died, and that was bad. Oh, no, spoilers! Oh no, I know everybody's like, what? I was just about ready to catch up on the Flash. So, oops, I hit something. I want to be careful with that, right? So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to build, right? Thinking about changes, I like to put one in here, a Z-sphere here, here, and here. And then I'll build off of this first initial Z-sphere. I'll build off the thumb. So I'm kind of thinking about the bone structure there. You could, if you wanted to jump the gun, this is one area that I'm okay with jumping forward. If you wanted to, since we are doing Z-spheres, if you wanted to establish the hand now, you can. Z-spheres make it incredibly easy to get a hand structure, especially in some sort of nice pose, right? With the fingers draped a little bit, the wrist draped, the thumb draped. This is really easy to get. Now, it will look like a bee sting hand. It'll be a big balloon, but you just have to shape it, and at least then you'll have your hand. It's pretty easy to replace the hands later on anyway, so I'm not, you know, if you want to go with the hand, you can. I would say, though, only do that when you feel that your model is done or you've checked with Veronica or myself and we say, yeah, you can go ahead and do the hand. But yeah, it'd be up to you. But, you know, a character with fingerless gloves, well, we need to make those fingerless gloves in the next week. We might need a hand anyway. What was that? The Full Sail Ghost just closed the door on us. All right, so I'm going to go with draw again. And like I said, I'm going to pull this one back, actually. And we're going to set that at the wrist. I'm going to go draw, bring out 1, 2, 3. And position that. Let's go scale. Let's bring that down a little bit. And then we'll go draw and we'll do just enough to get that thumb in there. See, here's another, I mean, her thumbs are gigantic. And I don't think they're really supposed to be that gigantic, but you can see we're having a little bit of that visual discrepancy there. That is a warning sign. Oops, wrong button. There we go. I don't like to have those in there. Going to the top. I don't stop. Okay, let's bring that over. Make some lobster claws, some Zoidberg hands. Okay. So that's about it, right? That's done, right? 100. No, this is again, this is far from being done. We just have a armature in place. And if I wasn't talking so much, this would have been done in minutes, right? This again should not be anything daunting. Okay, it's just putting some Z-spheres out there, hitting the A key, making sure it looks good. Okay, that looks okay. Now we're ready to actually make a geometry and begin sculpting. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little bit more time consuming, is shaping. Pay attention to the brushes I'm using. You'll notice I don't use a lot. For the most part here, I'm going to use smooth, move, and clay buildup, if I even get into clay buildup. Okay, brushes like Damien Standard, Inflate, Trim Dynamic, these might come into play on Friday, but we can keep this very simple, and it's really about us being able to see shape. Okay. So we're going to go to draw. We know that it's going to work. Let's make it actual geometry. Hitting the A key does not make it geometry, right? What do we have to do? Same thing we did with the cactus, right? We had to make it an adaptive skin. So there's your adaptive skin. We're going to go ahead and grab it. And we're going to keep Dynamesh at play, in play. Okay. So Dynamesh, remember, is that magic. You saw it when you were building your cactus. You yank, the geometry gets torn, you update, poof, you got new geometry, and you can start pushing and pulling some more. So the biggest thing here is, where do you want to start with? I'm going to bring this up a little bit. I'm going to go to 4. 256 might, I'm going to preview it and take a look. And all the 4 does is give us a little bit more roundness. And I want to hit Shift F. Shift F will show me my wireframe. Don't worry about the colors. Colors are what we call polygroups. Those are really not too important until next week. And in week 3, they just happen to, everywhere you put a Z-sphere in, it gives you a new polygroup. I'm going to wipe them out because the Z-sphere polygroups just make no sense for what I would use. Yeah, the colors, everybody goes, what about that? What are those? You know, but we don't really have to worry about it. What I'm looking for is a manageable resolution. And a lot of people ask, well, what resolution should I be on? So again, referencing the cactus build video, how does ZBrush figure that resolution out? What does that mean? Why, if I had my model and I gave you the same exact model, why would you end up possibly having 3 times the amount of topology with the same settings as I do? So I run 256 on my resolution, and my model ends up being 25,000 polygons. I give the model to you. You run 256, and your model ends up being 2.5 million. Why? Same settings, same model, different resolution outputs. Who can remember? Because a lot of people go, the subdivide. Well, I mean, the subdivide, if we look at bringing that down, oh, it's going to yell at me. This is when it crashes. It goes, no! That's preview. Let's bring that down. You can see the geometry sizes, they're pretty much the same. And if we bring this down to subdivision 2, right? The polygon sizes are not changing. The shape is changing because of what the geometry is referencing when it makes an actual surface, but the sizes of the polygons remain exactly the same. So my poly count's probably going to be very similar. It's basically what ZBrush thinks about to make your geometry with that resolution setting. Do you remember me talking about per square centimeter, per grid unit? Does that ring a bell at all in the video? Well, we don't have all the time in the world, so I'm going to go ahead and just fill you in. So now you'll remember it. You'll be like, oh, yeah, maybe I remember that. Maybe I don't. So basically, what this is looking at is the grid unit. It's not looking at your model or your model size. It is saying, I'm going to put 256 by 256 resolution per grid unit. So if your model is 10 grid units tall, you're getting 10 256s by 256s. If my model, same setting, is 2 grid units tall, I'm only getting 2 of those 256s by 256s. So this number is dealing with how much resolution per square centimeter or per grid unit, basically, you're getting in your model. That's what that means. So you have to kind of get a feel for what is good to start with, what is too much, what is too little. And I look at the sizes of my polygons. Think about these like pixels. If your shape is smaller than the polygon size itself, you're never going to be able to get it. Okay, now we are going for large shapes, so I can get away with larger polygons. If I have too much geometry, my shape will become hard to manage. It will get lumpy. It will be hard to smooth. If I have too little, I'll never get the shapes I'm trying to achieve. So you got to find that medium. You know, where should I be? What is functional? What is working? What is not working? I usually start visually. I can be anywhere this, maybe a little smaller for the first pass of shaping. So I'm actually going to take the preview off. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Let's try, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We'll be in the hundreds there. See how big my polygons are now. Well, that is something to think about. You almost have to do a size conversion, you know, because I believe ZBrush is per centimeter as far as their grid units are. So if you're working in Maya and it is, you know, you've got your set to inches, you're going to have to do a conversion there. The best thing to do in a situation like that is because you know it's going to be rigged in Maya probably, right? If that's the program you're working with. So I would build a block in Maya that is the size I need, just a cube, that's the height I need. I would export that out and bring it into ZBrush and then build to that size. That is my scale placer. So I would make my images, my initial structure to that size, and then I know that I will now have a one-to-one conversion as I go out of ZBrush into Maya. I'll know that it's going to fit what it needs to fit. But for this, we're not, you know, worried about that yet. You will be though at some point. Come on, I hate you. I mean, I like looking at the artwork, but okay. So I'm going to go with this. This looks good. 144 works for me. Density 4, and you know, we can see how much geometry it's going to make. But you know, my model's not going to be too high. I think it's going to be what, 30,000 points when it's done. So it's, you know, that's pretty low res. But I don't want a lot of geometry in the beginning. I want just enough to push and pull, and I will up res when needed, okay? So let's go ahead and make the adaptive skin. Now you'll notice we now have two. We have a skin Z-sphere and a Z-sphere. One doesn't reference Z-spheres anymore, right? You don't see Z-spheres being listed in the preview window. This one you do. Do not touch this one. This is your Z-sphere. We don't sculpt on it. We don't do anything. So we're going to go subtool with that selected, right? Make sure it's selected. Go down to rename. Do not touch. We want to sculpt on this one. Okay, this is the adaptive skin. This is now geometry. Okay, cool. And you can see, you go to this one here, just hit the A key again. It'll go back to its Z-sphere figure. And we got that one. Now, so we have our skin. This is geometry. This right here is still incomplete. We've done button pushing and some Z-sphere placement, right? We haven't done quite a bit of work here yet. We're going to keep going. I'm going to show you now what will get you on the grading board. I'm going to go File and Save As. Let's do this as 2. I want to do that again, right? Let's go 2 and hit Save. Now, those colors, you might get like, well, they confuse me. Just hit Control W, and Control W will kind of re-polygroup, and you see it gets rid of everything, gives you a solid color. If you don't like that color, there's nothing you can really do about it other than hitting it again until you maybe stumble across a color, but you are building up history every time you do that. It really doesn't matter what the color is. I think it's just more visually pleasing looking at it as one color for now, and we can change polygroups later on as needed, but we don't really need them now. So now let's shape. Shift P, bring back your wireframe, or not your wireframe, but your reference image. I'm going to start using my brushes. We haven't used any brushes yet, but we're going to start using brushes, and we're going to focus on the move brush. If you know that you're going to go to these a lot, you'll notice that when I click on one, it loads it to the top. So we already have clay buildup and move. So if you want, you can go ahead and click on a couple of the ones that maybe you've explored and you like using them, and it will load them to the top there as your quick picks. But I'm going to stick with the move brush for most of this first part. This is a huge brush. It is awesome. It is not the move tool, the move gizmo. It is the move brush. Okay. The biggest thing here is going to be making sure your brush size is an accurate size to what you're trying to achieve. I want to move the shoulder or the whole upper torso. I need a big brush. I'm trying to push the armpit in. I need a small brush. You have to change the size of your brush. I am either using up here, but more so I like to be on the model so I can see how the brush relates to the shape or the model itself. So I'm going to hit the S key, and the S key will bring up the slider. You just tap it, adjust, and it disappears. The other thing you could do is hit the space bar, and it'll bring up kind of like a hot box for you, similar to Maya. Okay, so let's just start with some big ones. Symmetry is on, right? Symmetry is working. Good, we are lined up. Make my brush a little smaller. And you'll notice I'm following one side of the body. I'm not following both, I'm following one. There are also certain things at this first stage I will not be worried about, simply because the geometry is not going to give it to me. So I'm going to go more for the general shape. You know, larger things like this, yes, I can start to try and push those in. But I'm not really going to target all the little nooks and crannies yet. Just kind of going through and pushing some big forms. Another thing that I found very helpful when getting into shaping is understanding what is the foreground, again, foreground, midground, background. Because if I'm trying to make the character wider, do I need to pull the lats out? So I need to be on the back side of the model versus the front. Brush a little smaller. We're going to go into the shoulders there. Emails. Now, as far as the wireframe, I only have it up because I want you to see what happens when I start to become too aggressive. What do you mean that was a teacher? What happened? Oh, the ding? Yeah, that was my email. What I'm going to do is as I move, you have to remember Control, left mouse button, click in space, drag and let go. And it'll reassess and realign your topology. This is very, very important. This will keep your geometry running smoothly, keep you from tearing the model, right? Keeping things looking like quads. We are not going in there and trying to destroy stuff. We want to maintain good quads, even though there's some triangles in here. You know, you'll see the difference, right? If I pull my geometry too much, it'll start to tear. So let's start getting that in the neck here. I'll show you what we're required to do for the head. I'm gonna make my brush a little bit larger so I can get that back. Oh my goodness. I don't know why it jumped out like that. That's what it is. So you notice I'm just kind of grabbing and pulling, and you can see that the geometry is beginning to tear and kind of not go with the surface anymore down here in the neck. And I really need to get more because I want to pull that up a little bit higher. Right, that looks terrible, but control, left mouse button, click, you'll see it realigns. And that's what we have to keep doing. It is easy. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. Simplify. I think what happens is people get into these brushes and they're like, oh, I need to use this fancy brush and this fancy brush. And I'm like, no, you don't. You just have to use the move and push and pull. You'll notice I'm not jumping around I'm not looking at this in perspective. I'm looking at it in my orthos, making sure that it lines up. I'm working down the asset. I'm not fighting the silhouette. Yes, I have done it before, so it is a little easier. I kind of know what I can get away with and what I can't. You see, I just keep updating. Bring that shoulder up a little bit. But again, you know, a lot of people go, oh, I'm struggling so bad. And the first thing I notice is they're not centered. Their model's not centered. Then I look and I go, you don't even have enough geometry, or you have way too much geometry. So what they do is they don't follow the suggestions. They don't have good imagery. They don't have good, you know, imagery line, you know, nothing's lined up right. And it just causes just a big struggle, always struggling, always kind of going, oh my goodness, it's not working. And that gets frustrating. So now we will push a little bit here because we will be sculpting into the back there. Now, one cool thing, if you hold Option, you can almost use the move tool like the move brush like a push or a pull. It's kind of like a push in or a suction. It really, really helps fill in volumes. I never noticed that, and then one day I was like, oh my goodness, what is that? I was watching some video years ago, and I was like, holy smokes, what is that? That's amazing, and it really, really helps. What is the benefit of perspective view? Well, right now we're seeing everything flat. So if you want to see things true to form, when you start getting into actual skull structure and things like that, perspective, yes, the option, sorry. Perspective gives you a better look than flat, right? You want to see some lens distortion because that's reality. I am going to hit the boots up a little bit just because. Now, look what I'm doing with my geometry. You notice how it's kind of starting to bend to the shape. Now, as soon as I update, gone. But to start seeing if I can get it to fit the shape, I use kind of the same idea that I would inside of Maya to establish those things. Now I'm holding Shift, and Shift will allow me to smooth through an area. I'm just kind of tapping on the surface, updating. I'm kind of verbalizing what I'm doing as I go. You know, but if you ask yourself, you know, how do you start shaping clay? Use your hands. And you also have to be okay with sometimes your model going into what we call the valley of suck. All right, this was a term that I first heard watching Ryan Kingsland, and he was a forensic sculptor, and he talks about the valley of suck and how everybody's work is going to go into this valley. The important thing is you get your work out of that valley, right? Yes, it's going to go there, and it's okay. Because as we're pushing and pulling, there's things that we just can't establish right out of the gate. And we sometimes have to go into this icky mode. And then eventually we keep refining and it will start to look better and better and better. Right, you can see here again, the legs are not going to line up as far as the boot shapes, but I'm going to push them a little bit more. I think I'm going to kind of do a balance between the two. And again, this is first pass, so we're looking for gradable. Now, Dynamesh. Here's what's crazy about Dynamesh. If I bring these too close, what do you think is going to happen when I update? It's going to fuse them together. This is something, and this is why I might, if these were any closer, I would take the legs and maybe bump them away from each other a little. I'd find a place that I could do the same thing I did with the arm on the other asset, move the legs out a little bit, because that's going to be a problem. Now, this one's not too bad. What usually happens when people have this asset is they don't have it lined up right in the center. So therefore, they're already over the line. So when they match the shape, it's overlapping, they Dynamesh and it connects. So again, you could see how these little things, if we have a little error here and then a little error there, it all kind of piles in and snowballs into an unusable asset, or a very struggling asset. Make my brush a little bigger. I want to bring that whole boot back there a little bit. And you can get pretty good in here. Let's see, let's zoom in. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I'm just going to pull that out. I'm going to update. And you're like, well, that looks terrible. And it does. You're absolutely right. But I at least have a marker now that I can start pulling that line around. Now, this is where perspective, not perspective, but rotating and looking at the model from different views starts to become really beneficial, because I can start to see that shape. From the front and the side, all you can see is front and side. You really can't evaluate any shape beyond that. And I've got to just kind of keep looking at that and bending it, right? And I know it's not going to be perfect. We got to pull the heel out a little bit. Again, I haven't used any brush other than smooth and the move brush. I'm just going to fill in that volume. So I like to look at the model. When I'm moving my camera, right, I'll usually target left and right, meaning the shape I'm seeing on the left and right, or front and back. But all that does is give you points. You have to go in there and look from that point to this point and fill in the gap in between there. And the only way you're going to see that is when you move your camera and you look down and go, wow, those are really flat, or there's a big indent there. Let me pull that out and round it, because it should be rounded. I'm going to go and update, smooth that. Now, if you want, I did talk about possibly getting into the clay buildup brush. My geometry is really not set up for much of anything shape-wise. Let me turn off my wireframe. Shift F again for wireframe. But watch what happens, right? If I invest too much shape and then I hold Shift and I go over it, it's gone. When I do my smoothing, I am very light-handed with the tablet. And this is, again, one of the benefits of having a tablet, is you're able to kind of push the surface lightly. I'm going to go ahead at BMV. Every brush has a 3-key hotkey. So BMV is the move brush. And you can see I'm very loosely following that silhouette. We'll invest a lot more time in it later on. Just updating. Anytime I make a pretty big move, I'm going to update. It's almost like, treat yourself like a computer, always updating. And usually when we don't want it to. Okay. We'll go ahead here and we're going to fill this in a little bit more. I'll really get to sculpt this out in the next pass. And honestly, if we wanted to. Yeah, right? Now watch. Fixed. Dynamesh is pretty cool. It's one of the reasons I really like Dynamesh for just kind of general establishment. And we know that this isn't, you know, I would go in and sculpt. I'd probably use the clay buildup to really start getting this outfit piece in play. But again, kind of going with a rough lay-in. Okay. She is a praying mantis. Okay. Let's go and do a little bit of work on those hands. Make the brush nice and small. Now she kind of has like this, her hand is tilted. You see the fingers there. You see, I'm just kind of bunching up that geometry and I'm letting Dynamesh eat up the discrepancies. A little bit of smooth. Smooth is great for kind of shrinking up volume on something, especially when you're in a low res state. Go to the bottom here, and you know, you could take your hand and kind of get a little bit of reference from it for just some general shapes. Now you do have to be careful. If you push Dynamesh too thin in areas and you update it, you'll get what is called Swiss cheesing. This is when you'll start seeing holes in your model. They are easy to fix, but it's much better if we stay away from that, right? So yeah, again, you have to evaluate. If I'm going for a really thin surface, if that space between surface A and surface B is too small and my polygon is bigger than that space, it's going to fuse them together or give you that Swiss cheesing effect. Is if you notice it, right? It's one of those things you update, you look at your model. If you realize it's happening and you need that shape there, undo, up-res, and then redo until you get it to where it's holding. Be careful though, you could go too high too fast. Maybe we're trying to do something we shouldn't do yet, but that's usually where I go. I go to start looking at the resolution. Bring that back, bring that forward, back, forward, and then down. Okay, let me take a look here, looking at it from different angles. Of course, we're going to save. All right. Now here I'm just using the move brush, holding Option. And then updating. Updating. Brush is a little too large. Updating. Okay, so first pass, you notice that this is the first time I'm really kind of zooming away from the model and looking at it. I've really tried to stay close to the reference, close to the model. Now I'm just kind of looking at it saying, okay, well, the cranium part of the skull should be wider than the front. And it's always updating. Now, I'm looking for the base shape of the head, right? Is it round? Is it oval? Is it heart shaped? I'm not really looking for skull structure. I did put some little eye indents there, but again, I'm not pushing for that kind of shape. But you can tell that this is where we now have a readable form. It matches. If I hit the V key, which gives me that, right? We can look at silhouette. It's kind of a small preview of what's up there. We can move around the model, see if anything kind of feels weird. I know, of course, there will be areas that, yes, they do feel weird because we haven't fully sculpted it in. But how does it read? Are we seeing shapes that we should be seeing? Hit the V key again, it'll bring that back. And you see basically what it's doing is it's taking your saturation and just dropping it all the way down to the black there. But this is minimal viable, right? Yeah, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but this is now complete. This is a complete asset. Is it proof of concept? Not really. We can see some attention to the clothing, but I really can't see any of the clothing or any of the surface shapes. It's very soft. It does match silhouette. For the most part, it matches form, proportion. I mean, if we go Shift P and we work our way through the model, things line up. And this is what we're looking for. It's kind of a soft. So this is kind of where you get into that. Okay, now I did my Z-sphere. I made an adaptive skin and I shaped it. If you just do Z-spheres, it's incomplete. Actually, just doing Z-spheres, super incomplete. You do Z-spheres, you make an adaptive skin, it's incomplete. You shape it, right? You get this now feeling, looking, kind of matching that reference. Now we start getting to that gradability. When you use ZBrush, it gives me that red material. Oh, the red material, the red wax. Such a cool thing when ZBrush first came out. I'm glad you brought that up. I usually don't talk about it until we get into next week, not next week, but next class, because the red wax is a pain. What makes it a pain is it hazes. And in the first week, it's not too bad. But when you start getting into details and needing to read edge qualities, the hazing of it causes an issue. And it really doesn't allow you to see the shapes properly. So all you do is you go to material. I usually go with the basic. And you can see that that works out. There we go. All right, now moving forward on this, if you want to take a stab at it, I know we're at the end here, but moving forward, what you would need to do after a phase like this is when we look at adding a little bit more geometry, right? So we don't add it through the adaptive skin anymore. We go right to Dynamesh under geometry. I would say now we go up to something like 256. So we're at 33,000 points. 256. I can't remember if I did anything to it. If you go to update your Dynamesh and nothing happens, right? My geometry is not changing at all. It's still the low res. All you do is hold Shift, tap the surface. It moves the verts ever so slightly, so now Dynamesh can update. Smaller polygons will now give me the ability to start sculpting in some of the shapes. Like we'll do the loincloth. In the next class, we'll go ahead and establish her outfit. We'll touch up the boots, anything that needs to be brought in there visually to hit more of that proof of concept look, get more familiar with shaping and such like that. Okay, that's on Friday. And that will be a Zoom one. We will not be here on campus, and we will go from there. But this right here is a fun, I mean, it's all fun. I love pushing and pulling clay, digital clay. It's fun. All right, so any last questions? Anything about what you've seen today? What have, I've used very basic, simple things, just the move brush, a little bit of clay buildup, which I probably didn't even need to get into. And it's just move, smooth, and using your reference and updating your Dynamesh, right? Not overkill with the Dynamesh, not underkill with the Dynamesh. We want to make sure we have a good amount. And you can see here, let's see where we're at. That is fun when you have the history and you can do that. So here it was from the beginning. You can see nothing really going on. That doesn't look all that good. It's just pushing and pulling and updating. Okay, so don't get in there and go, well, I saw this guy online and he used this brush and it was this and that. Keep it simple. Focus on shape, volume, matching your reference, okay? Let's see, so you had a question with the character selecting. Yes, what's up?
I sent you that email about which characters, and the character with the like cyborg arm and leg, you said, you know, maybe you could use those as your props later
Yes.
on. So
Mhm.
are you saying like I should just, if I was to choose that character, to model everything but those pieces and then?
No, you would still go through and I would model it symmetrically. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to follow the arm that is not cyborg. And then even for the proof of concept blockout, I would rough out the cyborg arm and leg, but there's a difference between blocking in something like that and actually building it with all the detail that a cyborg arm would have. So what we've had some people do in the past was they build the character and they rough in, you know, just kind of sculpting. So you would do most of your model symmetrically. And then when you got to that arm, you would turn symmetry off, just hit the X key, sculpt the larger shapes of the cyborg arm and leg. But then when we get into breaking it apart, we're just going to break that apart as a piece like we would any other part of the clothing. But in week 3, you're actually going to build all the pieces that exist in that cyborg arm, and that would be used as their prop.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And that is something that is a case-by-case scenario. It really depends. Like for the samurai, some people go, oh, but what about his helmet? Well, we can do the helmet. Maybe we can use the helmet as a prop. It's an add-on piece. It's not part of their main outfit because she still has a shirt and pants. One thing though, people that do that character, they look at it and go, oh, well, she has no wrinkles. She's wearing really tight stuff. And I don't care who you are, you got to have some movement in fabric. So there are a lot of opportunities for clothing seams and wrinkles where wrinkles should be, right? A lot of people that do line work drawings don't put that stuff in or identify the wrinkles, but there's usually in bend points, there'll be some wrinkles, you know, in any area that is not super sucked to the body is going to have loose fabric and will have some wrinkle information there. So a lot of people just go way too simple with her outfit. And that's where they start getting into trouble because they almost need the arm not to be a prop to give me something to grade as detail in week 3, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, but if you do a really good job with that and you do a really good job on the arm and the arm, you know, because to really do that arm, there's a lot of work there. And that's why it can go into the prop category.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we get there, I mean, if that's the one you really want to do, we can talk about it more. Maybe we can have a meeting someday and we can kind of, when we get to breaking it apart, talk about what should be there, what shouldn't. But for your block out, if you do go with that one, and I've seen a lot of people do that when they've done it very successfully. So I don't think I would stay away from it for any reason. But when you get into that one, model it symmetrically at first, and then right at the end, right, go ahead and for that proof of concept build, turn symmetry off and then sculpt in some of the larger mechanical pieces that you see in the arm, if that makes sense, right? And that'll be good for the block out. And then when we get into the next week, week 2, you start separating the parts and pieces. You take the whole arm and we separate it, and it is now its own thing. And now it's prepped for week 3 when we actually go in and build the pieces, and then we can replace the blocked in version of the arm with the high res multiple part piece.
Okay.
Making sense?
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
Looks like it's gonna be challenging, but I kind of
It
like
is. It is. You know, it is. But you know, if you think about mechanical stuff can be simplified. One, you don't have to do it in ZBrush. You can do it in Maya, right? So mechanical stuff, and even when you see mechanical stuff in ZBrush, it looks really complex. But when you break it down, it's a lot of primitive shapes, core, just basic things put together. And as long as they're paying attention to scale and placement, it looks like a hard surface asset. Because again, a lot of mechanical things are, you know, cylinders and cubes and rectangles, and it's just very primitive shapes with some bevels, you know. So there are ways that we can do it successfully, but kind of, I don't want to say cheaply, because again, it still has to look really nice, but cheaply, yeah. So
Okay.
I think it'll definitely be manageable. Definitely be manageable. And again, I would encourage you to, you know, come that week, you know, or anytime we set up a meeting and we can look at it, maybe talk about some strategies on how to approach that.
Yeah, I'd definitely be happy to do that.
Yeah, just email me. I'm not going to chase you all down.
Yeah. That's not your job.
Yeah, so just yeah, email me and we'll set up something. Please include, if you do email me for a meeting, include your times of availability.
Do you have certain do you have certain times? Because
Yeah.
I work full time from 6 to 2:30, and then it usually takes me, like, by the time I get home and situated, I'm ready by like 3:30.
Yeah, that's actually not bad because I'm usually 9 to 5. I do wake up with the family at 6, so you know, if I need to go, and if it's once in a while, I can stretch into, you know, hey, I just tell the family, hey, 8 o'clock, I need to set up a meeting. You know, I can do that once in a while, but you know, I think 3:30, 4 Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm usually open because I'm grading those days.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
the days like today, when we're done with lecture, sometimes we can stay a little bit later, like Friday, definitely, we can stay a little bit later and talk about some stuff. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity there, I think.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Comments, concerns before we move out of this day? Not like it's been horrible, so it's been a good day.
Yeah, I actually do have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
I also emailed you about my character selection, and you suggested either redrawing or getting some supplementary references. And
Yes.
once I do collect those, should I show my character to you again, or is it okay if I just move forward with that?
I mean, because of the time constraints we have, it would be more of moving forward and making those changes. It is always best to make changes before we start getting in to the actual creation. But, you know, again, if we keep going forward, then you might not get to modeling until Friday, and that's not going to work out. I think for first pass, you could be finding some supplemental reference as well as, because we also don't want, when I grade and I look at your reference and then I look at your model, I need those things to align. Otherwise, I don't know how to grade it other than it looks good or it doesn't. I might think it looks good, or I might think it doesn't look good. You think it looks really good, so on and so forth. So the more information I have to grade from, the easier that is for me to do. So I think if you spent today, you know, I would definitely want you to start blocking out by tomorrow, no later. So if you spent today, you know, getting some more feedback. Remember I was saying that opinion wise, some of the proportions felt off. You know, like the pockets, I was really, you know, the first thing that popped out of me was the pockets. You know, they just feel like almost like ballooned and stuck on.
Yeah.
I might kind of sketch over that a little bit and make them more like pocket flaps, a little bit more structural. As far as wrinkle information, there's not much you can do with that. And that is something that where you find the supplemental reference, we can use that in week 3 when we're actually doing wrinkles, because you would have already established all your core structural elements, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
As far as proportions, that might be something where just where in Photoshop, you cut the arm and elongate it, position them, maybe make the hands a little bit larger. I think you have some good opportunities where I think he's wearing cuffs or has some sort of a collar thing on the shirt or jack. I don't think he has a shirt jacket, but he's like armbands or something.
Yeah, it's like some bracers. Yeah.
Okay, some bracers, right? So that's cool because you can actually select, like I did today, make the hands a little bit bigger, and you're not redrawing anything. You're just using the computer to make life easier.
Okay.
right? But that would be, again, show it to some people. I'd probably go into lab and say, hey, what does everybody think about this? You know, that's
Okay.
sometimes a very scary thing, but it's a necessary thing, right? And say, hey,
Yeah.
you know, is there anything proportion wise you feel might be a little off? And then take some notes, and you'll hear a lot of different things. But if people keep repeating the same thing, that's when you go, okay, maybe I need to think about that, right? That's what I was talking about, opinion-based critiquing. But I think I would maybe push reference a little bit more tonight,
Okay.
but you got to start modeling no later than either late tonight or tomorrow.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Good question.
Thank you. Of course.
In the first deliverable instructions, it says to include the page number on the Photoshop image. Am I missing where to find that? No, that's your, like, page 1, page 2, page 3. So when you're submitting your PDF, it's going to have page 1 and page 2. So you're going to be building, you take screenshots of your work, you put it into a Photoshop template, you save it out as 1 JPEG, and then the other page is 2 JPEG. Then when you make your PDF, it will number them in order. It'll put page 1, page 2. There used to be a lot more pages. There used to be like 6 pages in your first week. Now there's 2, right? So it's a lot more simple. Some of that stuff might come out as far as labeling, like your block out 1, block out 2, block out 3, block out 4. We only have 1 block out now, so we really don't need that in the template anymore. But I haven't actually changed that out yet. So the first read would be first read is page 1. No. So remember, anything that is an integrated, we talked about this in first day, it'll tell you in each activity where to submit. So if it's an integrated assignment, it gets submitted directly to that assignment. It'll tell you, post your images to this discussion board. If it's an explore or a competency, those things will be listed into the deliverable sections. So your cactus build, right to that assignment. Your torso anatomy sculpt, right to that discussion board assignment. Your first read and your block out will be considered and talked about in the week 1 deliverable. Cool, no problem. All right, anything else?
Did you have, I had one more question, but it didn't have to do with this lecture. It had to do with like declaring your discipline for next month.
Stocks. I'm not really much of a stock market guy. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so what about declaring your, what do you mean?
My question is I definitely want to be like a modeler, but I was curious, and this might not be a good, like you might not be the best person to ask, I'm not sure, but the difference really between the environmental and then the automotive, like for like job placement, and then also like if you do one, how easy is it to switch to the other?
Well, automotive, I mean, you got to think, unless you're modeling cars that don't exist, there's a lot of laser scans and things like that of vehicles. So you might be like video games doing cars for racing games and things like that. But again, if they're real cars, they can just pull, update, and refresh textures and things like that. Environment stuff is probably going to be a better bet for getting in there. But even, you know, an environmental artist is still going to need to be able to model hard surface like cars and stuff. So maybe do, like, if you were thinking, well, how do I gauge those? Maybe do an environment with a car sitting in front of it, you know, kind of show that you can do all of it.
Yep.
Job wise, I think I've not heard of anybody other than for racing games that was just specifically a car modeler, you know, kind of thing. And again, getting into automotive design, working for Ford or Dodge or Chevy or anybody like that, you know, I've never really seen their process other than some little bit here and there, you know, stuff. And it's, you know, they still do clay sculptures and then they scan them and laser do this and that, because everything has to be really precise for the actual production process. So they're building CAD files and things like that. So it's a little bit different than.
Yeah, I think they use like SolidWorks and CATIA and stuff.
Yeah, so I think they're completely different. Unless you're going to get into architectural stuff, then that would be different than just, hey, I'm going to do a sci-fi environment, and then let me do this medieval environment, and you're modeling.
I mean, my main question was, is like, if I went for environmental, I could probably, you know, make a vehicle, you know, like I'm not losing anything for not doing that.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a modeler should be able to model anything.
Yeah. Okay.
And what I liked to do when I was, you know, producing more art was I would do a vehicle. Like I think in my PowerPoints in the background, you see a guy on a motorcycle. So it was a character with a hard surface asset on a small bit of an environment. That tells a story, right? He's sitting on the edge of the road. People are wondering, well, did he break down or what? So telling that story and showing, you know, all the stuff you can do, then they're like, well, you know, they're really good at characters. We kind of need an environment person. You know, their little snippet of environment looked really good. Let's go and bring them in. You know, I think that I don't see that hurting you at all. You know, showing everything that you can do. You can model anything. I love that character. I don't know, just every time I see it, it's really cool. But hopefully that helped. You more likely gonna find out more information, like as far as that goes. I don't know if they're doing a PAC advisory meeting or anything for the students the next round when they show up. But when you get into portfolio as well, since they deal with multiple facets, they might be able to give you more information on that.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Alrighty. Well, we don't have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and save this so I have it for the next class. Let's do that as 3. Oh, wait, I do. But, what's up? And not, like you have a question, but the but that you're going to ask after. Okay. So what I can do is I can say my goodbyes, turn off the recording, and then you can ask. If it needs to be a private question, then we can wait till everybody vacates, or sometimes people are just kind of logged in, and I put them in the waiting room, you know, so we can do that. Okay, so we want to do that. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that. So I'll bid everybody a good day. As always, have fun and get it done. Stay safe and healthy. And I will talk to you on Full Sail Friday. So I know you guys are really good with wearing your Full Sail gear. You'll probably forget on Friday, won't you? But I'll still see you on your cameras, right? Yeah. So wear your Full Sail gear. Wear your Full Sail gear. Yeah, yeah. Well, you can put a virtual background on. I won't even see it. My house is a mess. It's construction everywhere. So, all right, everybody, take care. Hang out, and I will get back in here, and we can answer your question. All right, everybody, have a good one.